Okay, we're going to get going. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Baumgartner, the technology editor for Multichannel News, and I'm very pleased to be joined here on stage with, well, let me start over so you know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Reference Design Kit, also known as the RDK. And I'm joined here on stage with somebody who knows more than a few things about the RDK and the direction that it's headed, and that's Matt Zelesko, the Senior Vice President, Converged Technology Group at Warner Cable, one of the partners in the RDK Development LLC. Is that the correct name?
Yep.
Okay.
RDK Management.
Management, excuse me. So, I think what we want to do, we want to avoid getting into the technical weeds on the RDK, but instead maybe attempt to keep the discussion at a higher, big picture level for this group. And just to kind of tease you a little bit, we are going to have a secret special guest toward the end, so stick around for that. So, but even though we don't want to talk about all the technical nitty gritty of RDK, maybe we still want to give people kind of a high-level sense of what it's about. So, for folks here, I mean, when you're trying to figure out what the RDK, or people are trying to figure out what the RDK is, let's start there. I mean, when you explain what the RDK is, what are you telling them right now?
Yeah, and I'm ready to confess early on that I'm a nerd. So while we try and stay non-technical, I'm going to veer there occasionally. So
Okay.
So forgive me, and I'll try and make these explanations as simple as possible. So when you think about the software that runs on a device, that software tends to come in a number of layers, or we call them a stack. And the RDK is part of that software stack. It's the lowest layers that are running on the device. The notion is it sits underneath the application layer, and it's really all the code that manages the device and what that device does. So if that's a video set-top box, it's the thing that's managing the set-top box and the resources of that set-top box. It's the thing that is collecting the video from the network and then showing that video to the TV. So the RDK is essentially a collection of software that forms those lowest layers of the software stack.
Okay. And before we kind of move into what it's not, what was the reason behind RDK? I mean, what's kind of the problems? I mean, we've talked about, is it just all about product acceleration, or kind of how do you, what are the big drivers?
So put simply, I think that the two key benefits are uniformity and transparency. So from a uniformity standpoint, the notion, again, is we take the RDK software and we run that across every single device. And that may not make sense until I sort of compare and contrast to what we do today. What we do today is we get set-top boxes from many different manufacturers. And historically, each manufacturer provides their own version of that software stack. So there's commonality among them, but there's also differences. And those differences add complexity for us, and frankly for the box vendors as well. I'll give you an example. We get over 300 drops of software from vendors over the course of a year. So you can imagine trying to bring in those releases, test those releases, and deploy those releases is tricky. So with the RDK, the notion is uniformity. You've got one set of software that runs on every device regardless of the manufacturer. So it simplifies our test and our deployment. And also transparency. So the intention here is that this is open. The software from top to bottom is accessible to everybody that licenses the RDK, and that's a zero-cost license. So you've got full access to the software, which means if we need to, we can go in and fix a problem ourselves. We can, we have full visibility into what's changing in that software. So, the uniformity and the transparency ultimately leads to velocity, like you said, and it's the speed to respond to issues, the speed to add new features, and the speed to add new devices.
So that's everything that it is and it aims to be. So, for just to maybe avoid or eliminate some of the confusion, what can you touch upon, like what the RDK is not? Because it seems like when we talk about the RDK, we end up talking about cloud-based interfaces, applications, but that's not really part of this.
No, and it's true. As we announced the RDK in the formation of this joint venture with Comcast, everybody lined up to be part of the RDK, and they wanted their software included as part of it. But we've been very clear that the notion here is this is not an application, it's not a UI, it's not even an app store, right? It provides a platform software, it provides a platform and a foundation for you to write applications and to build UIs, but we acknowledge that everybody that licenses this, and all the MSOs certainly, have unique advantages to their interfaces, and they want to create that themselves. So we provide a foundation for that, but we are not an application, we're not a UI, we're not even an app store or a framework.
Now, then, if you're going to do an app store, is that something you would do on top of it? Because we have a lot of app developers here, and it's like, okay, what does the RDK mean for those guys?
Right. So all hope is not lost. There are certain things that are part of the RDK. For example, we've got a world-class browser that's part of the RDK, and the notion there is you can write applications in HTML5, and if you write an app in HTML5, you can run that on any RDK device because you've written it against that browser and that device. So things like the App Store itself will sit above the RDK, and I think we'll have actually a pretty vibrant ecosystem of different things that will run on top of the RDK. But it's not the purpose of the RDK to provide those.
Okay, great. And in the past, like we've been covering the RDK for a little while. And there's there's these open source, and there's also shared source components. So, I mean, what are some of the big differences between those? And on top of that, why is it important to have a mix of those?
Yeah, I talked about transparency before, and it really is sort of a core tenet here is that we want everybody to have access to that software, and frankly, we want a community that's going to continue to develop that software, to contribute to it and help it evolve and grow. And ideally we would have made everything open source because there's sort of well-trod models of how you drive an open source project and how you have a community that contributes to it. Unfortunately, there's certain components inside the RDK which didn't allow us to go a pure open source route. So the concept of shared source was as close as we could get. It was as close as we could get to open without within the constraints that we had. And the idea is we have a zero-cost license. It's royalty-free license for the RDK. You sign up, you license the RDK, and then you have access to all that software. So we still have the community and the collaboration aspects, but it's not quite as open source.
So give me an example, like a shared source component in the RDK. Not we're trying to get too technical, but just as an idea.
There's a lot around device management and video rendering in particular. The early versions of that are more proprietary. They were developed by Comcast or on behalf of Comcast, and they're a little bit more constrained. Now that said, we go open source whenever we can possibly do that. So the browser we have is open source, as many of the different media framework elements we have are open source.
Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about the cable operator side of this on the MSOs in terms of like what the response has been and who's adopting it, who are the official licensees, because obviously Comcast, Time Warner Cable, part of the running the joint venture, we know about those. Liberty Global's been talking a little bit about an RDK strategy. So give us kind of a view of the world from the MSO side. Who's in the RDK camp, and what can you say about their involvement?
Yeah, so broadly I'll say, excuse me, that we like to let the MSOs speak for themselves in terms of their participation. Clearly, with Comcast and Time Warner forming this, we are both heavily invested in the RDK, and we have various trials and evaluations going on at several of the other MSOs, both North American and elsewhere.
All right, and maybe just because you've explained this to me, but maybe not everybody in the crowd knows. So maybe just put on your Time Warner Cable hat for 1 second, instead of the joint venture. So, what's kind of your plan for RDK?
Yeah, so putting on the Time Warner Cable hat, we're very excited about it. We view it as sort of a key enabler to our next generation devices that we're going to put into customers' homes. The reason we're focused on next generation devices is because we have software that works on our existing devices. It's not an area where we feel like we need to go back and retrofit that at this point. I'm know enough to never say never, But where we're really focused is on our IP set-top boxes, our next generation of set-top boxes that get video via IP. And also, I think there's a neat concept here, which is we're seeing the gateway inside the house, sort of the entry device into the house, converging. Right now, you've got a cable modem. You may have a wireless access point. You probably have multiple set-top boxes, some of which have hard drives for DVR. We see all of those different things coming together into one device. And that converged gateway, I think, is really the future of the house. And it's an area where we don't have a software stack today that can really address that need. You know, we have software stacks for the data products, we have software stacks for the video. Neither of those really comes together and solves this, and we think the RDK is that piece of software.
Okay. So obviously there's some, you kind of outlined some great reasons why Time Warner Cable is getting behind RDK and as an RDK strategy, but as you talk to other cable operators take a look at the RDK, I mean, what sort of quote unquote gotchas are they kind of fearful of, or what kind of objections are you hearing, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, so I think as we look across the MSOs, and again, I don't want to speak for them, but I'll kind of give you some broad generalizations here. First of all, I think the first concern was this is a Comcast project, and we've really addressed that with the formation of the RDK Management entity, right? So this is now a joint venture between Comcast and Time Warner, and again, it is a community that owns that software. We're just the stewards of it, right? We're there to make sure that we can effectively manage the way that it evolves and grows. I think the other thing here is just a recognition that an operator is taking on a bit more of the responsibility. They're providing more of the software layers. Now, they're getting that from the RDK, but to get the most out of the RDK, you've got to invest in it. And while there's going to be a number of us like Time Warner Cable and Comcast that are investing heavily in doing that development ourselves, I think there's going to be a very strong ecosystem around it that's going to allow third parties to provide either more commercial versions of the RDK, similar to a Red Hat for Linux, and I think there's going to be a lot of partners that can help those as well. But it is something where you do have to invest to get the benefit of it. Right.
And you're also looking a little bit, obviously, kind of globally, right? You guys are based in the U.S., Comcast is U.S., for the most part. So, what kind of work's happening to make it, more globally acceptable, for other cable operators that might want to look at this?
Yeah, so, and there are clear differences between, for example, the video infrastructure in North America versus the video infrastructure in Europe. I will say that a key focus of the next version of the RDK 2.0, is going to have a strong focus on the European infrastructure, DVB, and so it's an attempt to bring some of those elements in as well. So this is not just a North American software code base, but it could be an international code base.
And now, how far along is that work? I mean, we just started reporting about it, so how far downfield are you?
Yeah, I'm not here to announce anything or release future plans, but I will say it's sooner than later.
Okay. All right. Good. And then, when you hear John Malone speak these days, he's talking about the cable industry needs to come together, needs to achieve scale and so forth. But so scale's kind of been the name of the game, or seems to be kind of moving forward. And there's some other operators out there, Cablevision, Charter, a couple that don't seem to be on board yet with the RDK, or at least seem to be going in a different direction from what I can gather. So, I mean, can RDK can it achieve the desired scale without some of these big players?
Yeah, I think a big reason that we formed this joint venture is because we saw the value in it for ourselves. And I think if you look at the number of members and licensees of the RDK, there is a healthy investment here that goes not just for operators, but also box manufacturers, software providers, et cetera. So I think we're already seeing benefit and scale just from the collaboration between Comcast and Time Warner Cable on the RDK. This isn't a race. We're not trying to get to some magic number. This is all about us finding value in it and evolving it in those directions to continue to do that.
Okay, great. And we're going to continue on some additional questions, but before we do that, we're going to pair you up with somebody, and we have a special guest. It's going to come up, Steve Goldstein with Samsung, come on up, or come on down, or come on up, however you want to do it. Grab a mic. So,
Just, it's TV, guys.
yeah,
It's TV, right? We'll loosen it up a little. It's TV.
very good. So you guys had a announcement this morning about the RDK, so just walk us through what you guys are doing.
Sure. So we Samsung joined up with and signed the RDK agreement, and that's not so important. I think what's important is that Samsung historically has looked as a company for scale platforms that allow us to, kind of build not only just, for example, in North American cable, but also other cable markets around the world, or frankly, other markets. So we've been involved from everything from DOCSIS, honestly, in standards, to Zigbee. So a company with our scale in devices, literally, I'm from, like I said, refrigerators that are smart to the semiconductors that go into the majority of things that are in your hands right now. It's a major step when an industry as large as the cable industry is looking to harmonize on a platform. And frankly, even in our traditional pay TV set-top box business, when standards have been put forth like DOCSIS, DSG, Open Cable, you mentioned some folks out there, including Cablevision, Time Warner Cable, Comcast. A lot of those efforts were built on, basically software that's open cable software. So there are prior examples of scale occurring for, even companies like Samsung that traditionally weren't the long-term players in the industry dating back decades. So these provide opportunities for new entrants, and also, I think, provide opportunities for application developers and other people that are kind of sitting on the fence trying to figure out, hey, where do I engage with cable? What does that mean? Does it mean it's going to be on devices at Best Buy? Is it going to be just in people's homes, on set-top boxes? So I think it's a great opportunity for a larger community to think about bringing exciting new things that, frankly, Matt nor myself have thought up. So that's kind of why we need people to come out there and get behind the platform.
And I'm glad you brought up the retail side, because in the past, and there's probably people here who have the scars to show it, but OCAP back true two-way, one of the big goals was establishing kind of a retail environment and really opening that up, and for various reasons it didn't happen. So for RDK, I mean, this is for both of you guys. I mean, is there a retail angle, or do you anticipate there being one?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. I certainly hope there is an angle there. And Jeff, you and I have talked about this in the past, but Time Warner Cable has TWC TV apps on a number of consumer devices. And right now, that is a very custom effort. So on most devices, we need to provide, we need to write a custom app for that device. I think RDK opens up the potential to write once and run anywhere that the RDK runs. So to the extent that we can, see more and more consumer devices, not just operator devices running the RDK, that's a huge benefit for us, and I think for whatever ecosystem we have around that developing apps.
And you guys looked at, you guys are around the true two-way market. So I mean, do you agree? I mean, is there a kind of a retail component to RDK that you guys would look at, or that you anticipate?
So I think even right now, Samsung has a digital cable-ready box that's out there that basically is available at retail. So again, kind of tapping into a standard that honestly we knew about, we could write to. We could make it available in a little bit different way, but again, embracing cable services, bringing maybe different components of how it's presented with a different UI. So these platforms exist today, and whether OCAP is the right approach, or Open Cable or RDK, there clearly are some key things that the industry has to figure out. So things like security. For those that are in charge of programming, it's a very important thing that this programming is delivered securely in a way that both the studios and the cable nets feel comfortable with. So I think Samsung was an early proponent of an initiative called DCAS, which went all the way through the FCC. So as again, standards come out that allow not only people to write applications that could run on cable networks and possibly other networks and other MVPD networks, there probably are other standards that can continue to coalesce around, including security, that hopefully provides a footprint that not only is here in the United States, but ideally in other markets where retail can really thrive in that kind of environment.
And just to kind of get us back up to speed on your Samsung's work with the RDK, you guys announced that you're already delivering boxes to, and you guys mentioned Comcast. So give us an update on how far along you guys are with that, and also what kind of devices are you initially supporting with RDK? Is it going to be like, are you looking at like these big sort of gateway devices or IP clients? What kind of category are you guys going to start with?
Sure. So our RDK-based HD boxes are in Comcast paying subscriber homes today. So we anticipate that will continue to expand, and there will be a number of other boxes that I don't have my Comcast hat on, but Comcast has a pretty well publicized initiative in terms of bringing their Xfinity services, whether it's Xfinity Home or their video services. So you can anticipate that a number of those platforms will continue to run on the RDK, and Samsung looks forward to being a part of those initiatives. And as that expands into other operators that have been mentioned today, the nice thing about it is that the code is very similar, and it provides a great chance, again, to bring that scale. And from our perspective, even as a box provider, it's nice that the two largest operators in North America are starting to say, hey, look, at least we believe in this direction. And having that core base layer of software is very important for us, because that means that, hey, look, that means that Warner and Comcast can fundamentally be in the same direction, which again is good for us, because we like to do things that we can sell to multiple customers, even if there are customization. And I think the handsets that you kind of hold in your hand are a good example of where you see innovation from maybe a Galaxy phone that has different components from different operators, but it still seems like a Galaxy phone. So I think that the RDK in many ways speaks to those kinds of opportunities as they come forward.
Okay. And this is for both of you guys. Getting toward the end here, 2013, you didn't hit 2014. So as you look ahead next year in RDK, I mean, how are you going to define success next year? Is it going to be deployments and stability? Is it something else? I mean, how as you kind of look at the year ahead, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I'd reiterate from a scale perspective that we aren't in a race. We're not trying to do anything other than provide value for ourselves and that broader community. I will say I think 2014 is going to be the year of deployment, right? We've got a number of operators and MSOs that have signed up for the license. A number are doing evaluation. They're doing active development on it. I think 2014 is really the year when we see a lot of that come to fruition and shipping units from many operators.
Okay, so that's got to be music to your ears. So, Steve, how are you going to define success? I mean, is it going to be, are you looking at certain deployment scenarios, or is it going to be kind of expanding beyond Comcast on the RDK? How are you going to define success next year?
So, I think we've been around cable long enough to know, first of all, they're heterogeneous networks. It takes time, city by city, to deploy. This isn't you can just put it up and all of a sudden it rolls out. So we've worked very closely in the past on open cable, where it requires some patience. It requires working together with not only the vendor community, but with the developers, the operators themselves, and all of a sudden this city lights up, the next city lights up, and as it exists now, for example, I'll hark back to open cable. Open cable is ubiquitously deployed not only in Korea, but all of Time Warner Cable's footprint. But it didn't start in all of Time Warner Cable's footprint.